Hello, welcome to the Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast, where myself, Wendy Capewell, and invited guests on occasions talk about subjects relating to ourselves and our relationships. So let's get on with this week's show. So hello, and today I'd like to welcome Isabelle Griffith. She is an emotional wellbeing coach, but I want you to tell our listeners all about yourself. So tell us a bit more.
Hi Wendy, and thank you for having me first of all. So yes, I'm an emotional wellbeing coach, and without going into the details of my story and how I got there, I spent 20 years in the corporate world
podcast,
and then I found myself at some point in a really difficult place.
Invited guests on occasions
that led me to
talk about
yoga,
subjects relating to ourselves
and
our relationships.
And that in
so
turn
let's
led
get
me
on
to
with this
coaching.
week's
so
show.
Really my personal experience and the difficulties that I've had in my life, particularly at a point quite a few years ago now, has really led me to doing what I'm doing. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world, and now my passion is really to help women to reconnect with themselves, to accept themselves wholeheartedly, and to develop self-trust. And I define self-trust as this really deeply rooted knowing that you have the inner resilience to cope with anything life brings you and to thrive. And I think ultimately for me, self-trust is trusting yourself enough to live that bolder life that you desire to live, that you wish to live, but you're not trusting yourself enough to do at the moment. So that's a very short snippet about me.
Oh, that's really interesting, and I do get that bit about trusting ourselves or believing ourselves or even rediscovering ourselves. I often talk to clients and they've lost their identity. They don't know where they fit, and they've been caught up in that corporate world, or maybe in other situations, but especially I think the corporate world, where they feel they've just got caught along with the tide and doing everything for others. And I think mums do that as well. I think they're guilty.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, they just lost themselves and they feel they don't know who they are. So I think, really interesting.
Yes, that's a very similar story to what happened to me, where it was probably 8-9 years ago. I'd always been interested in self-help and kind of self-growth. But I found myself sitting on a little bench outside my house on a beautiful day, and I probably looked like the picture of happiness, having my tea in the middle of a working day to anyone passing by. But really at that moment, I had my team and we're a team of 60, had been made redundant a few weeks before. And I'd always been someone who was using a sense of controlling in my life to feel safe, to tame my anxiety. And at that moment, it felt like everything was pulled from under my feet and I was free falling. And also, I'd always been very much defined by my career. I'd worked ever since I left university. I'd never stopped. And when I stopped, my world came crashing down. I had no idea who I was without a job, without, talking about the corporate world and all of these sort of identities that we take on as we climb the career ladder. So I found myself sitting there with an anxiety that was rising by the minute. I couldn't even go to the post office and be told, I'm sorry, we ran out of stamps, without it completely collapsing my day. And and I had no idea who I was. And so that, that's very much been my journey, maybe a little bit more dramatic than some people. I think, we come at it from different angles, but I think there's often a point in time where either we start feeling sick from perhaps experiencing burnout or something along those lines, because we've pushed ourselves so much, served everyone else, that we've lost who we are and we're exhausted, or there's a life event that forces us to stop. And then we're left kind of sitting with who we are and what's going on in our mind. And it can feel like a prison. So I think it's unfortunately quite common in the world that we live in today, because it's so fast-paced, because we connect digitally, but we're just so disconnected
Definitely.
So yes, I can relate to that. That's very much a part of what led me to where I am.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you said, you know, those feelings of loss, really, when you were made redundant, because that's what you were obviously going through. It was a grieving process, because people don't always identify with the fact that loss and abandonment feelings are very similar to those of losing a loved one.
Yeah.
I think people don't recognize that you can have that sense of loss or abandonment, whether it's a job, a home, a pet, a situation, that people don't always identify with that, and they don't understand it, so it's quite scary.
And it's a really good point, because I think particularly when it comes to something like redundancy, it's so common. And in fact, it wasn't the first time that I'd experienced redundancy, but I'd always hopped straight into another job. But this time I thought, I was quite looking forward to it, funnily. I thought, this is a great chance for a new start. I'm going to take some time off, think about what I want to do. Really didn't expect that sort of crash. And it was very much like a feeling of abandonment. I always liken it to it's a little bit like when you are in a relationship and you feel like you think it's the time to end it, you're ready to end it, but then if the partner that you're with comes and says, I think we should end the relationship, suddenly you the one who feels abandoned. So it's always felt a little bit like that to me. And yes, I think we don't often look back in the past and think, why is this affecting me so much? What is it that might have happened in my story, in my past, that's really triggering me right now? And that itself is a whole journey. And that's the healing journey of coming around full circle. And I think once you understand where it's coming from, it's such a relief. You can finally get to the point where you realize there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not flawed. It's not my fault. It's not that there's something broken that I need to fix. It's just that my mind has been triggered by a past event, or that I have these thoughts in my mind that are taking me to a dark place. So for me, that's where mindfulness really helped me to just step away from the situation and kind of become the observer and realize that these are just thoughts and it's really not my fault. And actually, there's nothing broken with me. All that negative self-talk is not who I am. But for most of us, it's constant. And
Yeah. And I think we rush on in life and never stop that long enough to get to know ourselves, because we're busy, and everybody these days are filling their lives from the minute they wake up until the time they go to bed, and even longer. It's got to be do all the time, and that doesn't give us any time for self-reflection. And I think sometimes people do that as a coping mechanism, but actually it isn't, because it's what we're doing is just avoiding that connection, and then something dramatic will happen, and then we feel all that loss and all that sense. Whereas if we know ourselves and learn about ourselves, I think we're better prepared to deal with these tricky situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I love mindfulness. I think it's so good. So tell us, you talked to me another time. We had a chat before, and you talked to me about pause. So can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I love that.
I talk a lot about pressing pause as a principle, because I think that's what we don't do, and that's exactly what you were saying. When we live in this rushed energy constantly, and we hear everybody else's voices, we're distracted by social media every minute of the day, we feel very disconnected. And for me, the only way to reconnect with ourselves is to press pause and to be with ourselves quietly. And I think we confuse being with ourselves and being by ourselves. for me, being with yourself is really being in calm and stillness, and ideally taking a few, even if it's a few minutes, to meditate and reflect, as you were saying, just being and noticing, how am I feeling? What's going on for me right now? It doesn't have to be hours of sitting in meditation. In fact, it doesn't have to be sitting, but it's just pressing pause and asking ourselves, how am I feeling? What's going on for me right now? And what do I need? So that's a very practical little pressing pause. Or generally, I think pressing pause is really the place from which we develop that relationship, and where we start to get to know ourselves, know what's going on for us, know our patterns, our triggers, our thoughts, and start to develop the ability to be more present in our life. Because otherwise life goes by in a flash. It's a bit like a tunnel vision, and we see the light at the end, and we're rushing at full speed towards the light, thinking this is the place where I can finally be me and be happy. But that doesn't happen. We've got to seize these moments in our day-to-day life. So for me, pressing pause is fundamental to all of that. And I don't want to go into a lot of neuroscience, but it is where our ability to develop a more positive outlook on life sits, where we can find more fulfillment and happiness. So I'm a big advocate of that. And particularly I talk about, and I think that's the conversation we had about pressing pause in the context of this harsh inner voice that we have in our mind all the time. And I use pause as an acronym for 5 steps that really help me to bring myself back when that happens. I think I have a black belt in the criticism, and I've worked on that a lot over the past 8 or 9 years. But that moment on the bench, my mind felt like a prison, and like I said, it's this is the journey that I've had to go on. So for me, that pause is those 5 steps, and P stands for pressing pause. So that's when you notice your mind started to go in overdrive, thinking, I'm not good enough. Of course, that didn't work out. Who did I think I was? Or I'm such a bad parent, or whatever it is that your mind starts to gallop with. Just press pause and take a few deep breaths, and really try to experience the breath and take it all the way to your navel. And that's really the mindful part of that process.
I found that really valuable. And what I practice and I preach is, when you do those breaths, to notice the breath entering your nostrils or through your mouth. Feel it, and really feel the texture, feel what it, the sense of it. And I always ask people, can you tell me the difference of the breath going in and the breath coming out? What's different about it? Because when you start really thinking about that, you can't think about anything else.
No, that's it. It's really moving yourself away from the mind and into the body. And that's a big part of what we do in mindfulness, is kind of leaving that mind busyness and just going, well, what does it feel like to be me in this moment? So you take that pause, and as you say, it's really helpful to notice the sensations of your breath, as if you were following it like a thread, going in, swirling around, coming out. And then A is for awaken. So that's starting to say, well, what's going on for me in this moment? How do I feel? And what am I thinking? Why am I in this space of whirlwind of negative thoughts? What are these thoughts? And this uncomfortable feeling, which can be shame or guilt, or where is it present in me? Is it a compression in my chest, or a tightness in my abdomen, or maybe my shoulders are rising up? What does it feel like to what you were saying? And what are the thoughts? And then U is for unconditional self-love, and that's really self-compassion. And for me, that's the turning point between being harsh and critical with ourselves and coming from a place of love. And it's really about maybe placing our hands on our heart and saying, what do I need in this moment? What gesture would be soothing to me? What words would be helpful to hear? And it's saying that and doing that to ourselves, because we do that to everyone else around us. But I think a lot of us find it so difficult to do it to ourselves. And I often say to people, imagine that you are soothing a child who's really distressed. What would you say? Maybe you'd rub their arm with your hand. Maybe you say, it's okay, sweetheart, don't worry. It will all be fine. Or don't worry, it's just thoughts. but you're not your thoughts. Find those words that are really soothing for you. And then S is for self-inquiry, and that's really going, those thoughts anyway that I'm having, are they even true? And if they're not true, well, can I let go of them? Or are they helpful? Are they supporting me in who I'm choosing to be? And then the last one is E, and that's embodying your values and who you want to be. So if those thoughts, if telling myself I'm such a bad mom, or of course it wasn't going to work out, because who did you think you were? If that doesn't help me, which I mean, it's highly unlikely that it would, then what else can I be thinking? And maybe it's just saying to ourselves, I'm the best mom that I can be in this moment. Or I'm doing my best, and when I know to do better, I'll do better. Or I'm only human, and this is part of my humanhood. It's just finding those just kind of soothing thoughts. So that's the pause formula that I use, and I can honestly say that it completely shifts the energy within you. And if you practice enough, it starts becoming much more automatic.
Yeah, and I think practice is the key, because I think we forget that, we did it once or twice and it didn't work. But if we go to the gym once or twice, we're not going to get fit in that short space of time. So I think, we have to accept that this needs us to practice it for it to become, as you say, part and parcel of what we do. And I love that acronym. I think it's very powerful. But I think I love mindfulness, as I said. I think it's such a great tool. And one of the things that I do quite often with my clients as well, especially if I see that they're quite anxious, is the mindfulness breathing. And then I do a body scan, and it is noticing those areas that you're feeling that tension, and then going back and then tightening the muscles and then relaxing them, rather than doing it all in one go, or just going, I'm tense, I'll let it go.
Yeah.
Really spending those few more seconds, because that's all it needs. I find that really, really helpful.
The body scan is a really powerful practice, I think, because again, it's really almost magical in taking us out of our mind and into the body. How often do we go, what's the sensation between my toes, or in my toes, or at the soles of my feet? We don't really, we might go, I feel a little bit like this, but to really go and explore your body I absolutely love that practice. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's been really lovely talking to you today, and and I love hearing about mindfulness and how you got there and what you're doing now, which is great. So, what is the one thing that you would like, could offer somebody as a tip to take away?
I mean, I think very simply, it's just whenever you feel worked up, anxious, or stuck in looping thoughts that may be negative, is just press pause. And you might want to go through this pause acronym, or just simply take a few deep breaths, notice what's going on, and ask yourself, what's going on for me, and what do I need right now? And that takes a minute. Maybe 2. I mean, if you have 5, that's great. And you can do that when you're queuing up in the supermarket. You can do that when you're driving. Just don't close your eyes. Anybody can do that at any time. And it will really shift you from that rushed energy to a more grounded place where you can then do what you need to do, feeling more peaceful and calm. So just press pause. That's
brilliant. I think if we'll put that in the show notes, that an acronym, if that's okay. And I'm also going to put all your details, contact details in the show notes. But I mean, for anyone who's just listening, the easiest way of getting in touch with you if they'd like to learn more?
I think the best way is on my website. So it's lightupandthrive.com. And yes, you'll find me there, find all the details about what I do and any resources that may be of interest. The pause acronym is there as well. So you can have a little dive into what's available and see what helps you.
Okay. So it's lightupandthrive.com. .com. Okay. lightupandthrive.com. And thank you very much, Isabelle Griffith. It's been an absolute delight talking to you today.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Honestly, I could talk for you for hours. So it's been a pleasure. Thank
Well,
you.
maybe we'll arrange another time as well, so that
Yes,
we can have another
definitely.
time. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, and thank you for listening. If you want to learn more, you can find out more details and information in the show notes. Alternatively, you can go to my website, www.wendykatewell.co.uk. Bye for now.